person asked on YouTube, they said, I sincerely mean this. What is your response to people who have had negative experiences with balanced dog trainers? Do you believe there is the risk of fallout with what balanced training does? And if so, do you believe it's rare? I'm unsure of what side of the training spectrum I lean towards, but my dog's experiences with balanced training made his aggression worse. I am totally willing to admit that he's probably an anomaly, but it does make me wonder if there are others in a similar boat who are unsure what to do now. This is a really, really, and I appreciate how this question was asked because I feel like it was asked in a very inquisitive way of somebody saying, listen, I don't know what's up, but it felt like post my experience working with a balanced dog trainer that my issues got worse after. And I want to know what's up with that, right?
Okay. So this is from their
that's what they said is I'm not sure what side of the training spectrum I lean towards, but my dog's experience with balanced training made his aggression worse.
Okay.
Right. Damn. So this is a great question. And I think that most balanced dog trainers would immediately take this and just shut it down and just be like, no, it didn't make it worse. You're wrong.
Yeah.
You didn't put in the work. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Now, listen. Do I think that it quote unquote made it worse? I don't know. I don't know. I would obviously, as far as this person's individual situation, I would need to know so many details as far as what the issues they were having were and what they feel like went wrong. And then I would need to know more details about the actual training that happened so I could dictate what went wrong. Then from there, I would be able to come up with a consensus. Now, what have I experienced that I could make people aware of that I would say kind of can go hand in hand with this as far as why people think that balanced dog training sometimes can make things worse, and why I think a lot of force-free trainers say that balanced dog training has the risk of fallout and can make things worse, right? Well, first we would have to understand at what point do people generally hire a dog trainer? What types of things do dog trainers generally instruct owners to try to do? And what could give the perception of something getting worse, right? So let's start off with when people generally hire dog trainers. So I talk a lot about dog trainers are generally going to be hired around the age of 8 months to 2 years old. I would say if we were going to look at a median of dogs that we work with in the age that they're at when they start training, it would be in that range.
Yeah.
Now, why is it generally in that range? It's generally in that range because that is when the dog is going through a fear period and maturity, right? So between their fear periods, between their maturity cycle, them coming into their own, generally at the first sign of seeing behavioral issues, the person will reach out and try to hire a trainer. Now, let's say worst case scenario happens and you start working with a trainer, a balanced trainer, right? The dog is starting to show baseline signs of aggression. You work with a balanced dog trainer, and either you as the owner don't put in the work, right? The trainer sucks and gives you bad advice, right? Any combination of the two of them. And for whatever reason, you leave the experience saying, well, that didn't work, right? What in a lot of cases can wind up happening is that just due to coincidence of your dog's age when you started your training, right? And the fact that if you do training in a bad way, and this is whether it's positive or negative, right? Whether it's balanced, whether it's force-free, whatever it is, and you're not effectively doing the training, what happens is you create more frustration, right? And where does aggression or anxiety or things like that generally come from? They come from a place of frustration. So it's not necessarily the balanced training made it worse. In some cases, it could be coincidence of the training didn't work, and you tried to do the training right in the middle of the dog's fear period or maturity cycle, where the dog is progressively moving through the cycle of their behavior is escalating and intensifying. And just due to shit timing of when the training takes place, once you stop the training, the behavior continues to escalate towards what it would have done whether you had done balanced training or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So you're doing the training right in the middle of their behavior starting to get worse. And if it's a spectrum of, let's say with no training intervention, it's going to go from here to here, right? And you start the training right in the middle of it, and the training doesn't work, well, the behavior is going to continue to escalate to here. which we could look at from the spectrum of, well, I tried balance training, it didn't work, and then my behavior got worse after balance dog training, where in actuality, whether you did the training or not, it probably would have got worse, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one big area in which people don't really realize is that.
Yeah.
Right? Now let's look at the next thing of what do trainers, particularly balance trainers, instruct you to do, right? Generally speaking, as balance dog trainers, we are going to instruct you to try to tackle your issues pretty head on, right? If you're having issues with reactivity, we've got to go in the places where you're having the reactivity to work on it, right? If you're having aggression issues towards guests coming over, we have to work your dog in the presence of those types of things, et cetera, right? And getting back to, if you do your training improperly and you're trying to address those things head on, what's going to happen is repeatedly over and over and over again, your dog is going to rehearse the unwanted behavior because you're not avoiding it anymore.
Yeah.
I think people prior to training, right? Or when they're trying to do a force-free approach, we'll say, right? Everything is about management. I think a lot of people do a very good job of managing their dog's unwanted behaviors, primarily with reactivity and aggression. They know where their dog reacts, so they don't go to those places. They know where their dog acts aggressively, so they don't put those dogs in those situations, et cetera, right? And you kind of play this catch-22, which is, well, force-free trainers will tell you you always need to work your dog under threshold, which basically means manage your dog forever and slowly try to increase your dog's threshold to things, which we've talked many, many times on this podcast before about. I don't really think you're ever going to get to a place where you don't have to manage those issues doing it that way. I don't think you're ever going to increase their threshold to a point where they're going to be tolerant of those types of situations, right? So you could either say, all right, well, I'm just not going to do balance dog training and I'm just going to manage and avoid situations forever, or I'm going to try a force-free approach and basically still what you're doing is managing and avoiding situations forever, right? Or I'm going to try a balance dog training approach and I'm going to try to tackle these things head on. And as you put your dog in the situation where you try to address those things head on, if you don't do it properly, you don't stop the behaviors as you need to, you don't give good enough guidance, what happens is your dog gets more frustrated because you're trying to give them guidance in this kind of escalated situation and it's not working, right? And the dog rehearses the behavior more because this is the first time they've ever been put in those types of situations before. Yeah. Right? Because you've just avoided them forever, right? So you wouldn't have seen the issues. So same deal. Let's say the training isn't done well, right? You don't get the support and the guidance you need from your trainer, right? And you're now putting your dog in all of these situations they were never put in before, you're going to see more problems than you've ever seen before, which again would put you in a position where the training made it worse. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yep. So I think that's thing number 2 that will commonly happen in these situations is your dog is exposed to more triggers because you're trying to actively work on them. And if you don't address it properly, your dog's behavior will intensify because they're experiencing it more, because they're rehearsing it more. And in a lot of cases, aggression and reactivity is self-reinforcing. So if they're rehearsing it and they're getting away with it, what winds up happening is the behavior gets stronger. Yeah. Right? Because it's self-reinforcing. Of course. So that's thing number 2. Thing number 3, right? There is a large percentage of dogs out there that do not like being told what to do. Right? And if you look at, by its nature, the force-free approach of dog training, right? The force-free approach of dog training is the dog always has to be a willing participant to the training, right? Which means the dog's never doing anything because they know they have to do it. The dog is never doing anything because they have any sort of respect for you. The dog is only performing the behaviors you want them to perform because they're a willing participant, because there's something in it for them to do those things. Now, again, yes, in a perfect world, if that worked and it accomplished all your goals, mazel tov, right? I'm happy for you, right? Yeah. Merry Christmas. That is great, right? I'm not saying like if it works for you and it achieves the level of training you want, hell yeah, right? Personally, I don't like the idea that I always have to be at the mercy of my dog deciding if they want to listen to me or not. I don't want to be in that position and avoiding things forever, right? So because there's a large percentage of dogs out there that don't like being told what to do in situations where they don't want to do it, what you'll see is some of those dogs will have lived their entire life being managed and avoiding situations and never being told what to do, and you don't really experience any problems past your life is extremely inhibited with them. And the first time you start doing training, I think Dog Daddy talked about this in one of the clips we posted, which is he'll look at a dog and say, I could tell with this dog, the second we try to give it direction, it's going to try to bite me. Right. Or it's going to try to bite somebody else or whatever it may be, which I completely agree with him. I've seen a million dogs like that before where people come in, and I can think of one in particular, this dog, Frankie, that we worked with. And this dog never bit anybody before, right? Never had any problems. I literally took the leash from the owner in session number 1, started walking the dog away from the owner. This is before we even put any training collars or anything on this dog. I literally grabbed the leash and just started walking away from the owner. This dude turned around and started lunging at my face. He bit my sleeve and ripped my coat that I had on. He's scratching me all over the place and stuff like that, solely from me grabbing his leash and walking him away from his owner. Right? There are dogs out there that will do that regardless of the type of training you're using. Now, again, because balance training at its core gets down a little bit into the nitty gritty of just kind of making dogs do certain things, like making certain things non-optional. Like, yes, like if I need to walk you away from your owner, I need to walk you away from your owner. If I need to put you in this crate, you got to get in the crate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Sure.
Because that happens, what we'll find is that we'll tap into new states of mind that you've never experienced with your dog before, because you've always been at the mercy of you do what your dog wants them to do. Or wait, you do what your dog wants you to do.
Yep.
Right? So again, you get back to with bad training and bad follow through and bad coaching, right? And I'm not even saying using an e-collar wrong, right? I'm not even saying any of that. I'm just saying not enough follow through of when you start to experience something like that. Like, let's say an owner experiences that situation that I just described because they tried to make their dog do something and their dog's behavior intensified and they tried to bite them or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Without the proper guidance, what's going to wind up happening is you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, well, that definitely didn't work. Balanced dog training is definitely making my dog more aggressive, when it's not really that balanced dog training made your dog more aggressive. It's just that you have a dog that doesn't want to be told what to do. And I look at that as a bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
If I've got a dog that if I take the leash and walk it away from their owner, it tries to attack a person or tries to bite a person, or even, whether he wanted to kill me or not, the fact that he ripped my coat and scratched me up and tried to lunge at my face and stuff like that, that's a bigger problem. Sure, we could say, oh, we'll just avoid and manage that. But no, that's not okay.
No.
You know what I mean? That's a liability of a dog that you have that at that point if you can't get past it. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So that's the way that I look at this conversation of like, does balanced dog training make behavior worse? I look at it from that lens of like, we could all sit there and say, if we never did the balanced dog training, that wouldn't have happened. But like, that's just a bigger problem to me then at that point. That's not a problem with the training. That's a problem with the coaching for the owner of the follow through of like, well, when this happens, this is what you do. When this happens, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So that's kind of how I look at that.